While other schools were out there having just an abysmal time, some of them were just joyous. Michigan, through early signing day, national signing day, whatever you want to call it, ended up having exactly the day it hoped it had. It basically held serve, got one guy to commit, and no drama, no surprises. We're going to discuss it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And Michigan went ahead and signed, as of right now, everybody but one, as far as we know. So they took kind of a different style of of doing things, okay? So normally Michigan tweets out like, hey, this guy signed. Hey, this guy signed. Hey, all right, this guy signed. All of that kind of stuff. That didn't happen this time. They just kind of let people announce when they've signed. So I haven't gotten confirmation from my person inside the building about if they've gotten all of the signatures in and everything set, but there's only one person that supposedly hasn't yet, and that's Josiah Edmond, the 4-star from Napanee, Indiana, who was the former Purdue commit. There is no worry there. He is just signing late. He's signing at 6 p.m. local time for him with his high school. So for all intents and purposes, Michigan has signed its class. So looking at what it has here as far as the how 24/7 Sports has it, I mean, they don't have Cole Sullivan or Josiah. Cole Sullivan is supposedly signed. He's been retweeting other people saying he signed. So that's pretty good indication. And it seems like they forgot to put Jeremiah Beasley, who was one of the earlier signers. But it was just it just happened, right? They got a commitment from Lugard Edokpai. I don't know if that's how you say his name. I'm really bad at saying names of things. I was told that you don't say Nakamoa when it comes to Olivier. I was calling him Oliver Nakamoa, and it's like Olivier Camwa, apparently. Sarah makes fun of me because I don't even know what it is, if it's Sagano or Sagano. I say it wrong, whichever way I say it. I say Chez Lounge when she says it's Chaise Lounge. And I said something else yesterday, Zatstiki or something like that. And she said, no, it's tzatziki sauce. So I'm probably messing that up. But, I mean, it's a good class. It's not necessarily insane, right? It's 19th overall, according to 24/7 Sports. Their composite has it 15th overall. So, I mean, that's kind of a normal Michigan class. It is disappointing considering that it was the number one class in the country at one point. It felt like there were all these 5-stars. They did get one guy who was a 5-star at the time in Jaden Davis, and then he ends up being bumped down. There's been a lot of guys who have been bumped down. Like Brady Prescorn was up around like 40, 50 or something like that when he committed. He's down to 222. Some of these guys were just rated much higher at some point. Jacob Oden, Channing Goodwin. Channing Goodwin wasn't like a huge guy there. But I think one of the interesting things is I put together all these capsules and I stayed up till 1 a.m. doing it. There was a reason why there was no show yesterday, and it was not because I was playing hooky. It was because I sat and wrote capsules for every single guy. And before I knew it, I looked up at the clock and I was like, all right, and I'm done. And it's 1 a.m. Whoops. But one of the interesting things is it's kind of like last year's class where they don't necessarily have like some super high end talent there per se. Like there's not, the highest rated guy is Andrew Sprague, who's 56 in the country, according to the traditional 24/7 Sports. If you look at the composite, it's Jordan Marshall at 83. The composite looks a little bit nicer because it's Jordan Marshall at 83, Jaden Davis 93, Andrew Sprague at 111, Brady Prescorn 123, Blake Frazier 168. It's just a little bit more forgiving in the composite. But and the same, I think, is for on threes. I'm just looking at 24s, 7s, 24s. It's not Jack Bauer's deal, but it's still, it's when you look through everybody and you go through all the services, it's just like last year in the sense of there's a couple guys who are 3 stars all the way through, but they're few and far between. Luke Hamilton is one who's like a 3-star all the way through. Every service has him as a 3-star. Jake Guarnera, who when you see some of his film, it's pretty incredible. EJ Holland absolutely raves about him. He's another one that's like a 3-star all the way through. I believe Micah Capana. No, I think Micah Capana is a 4-star by ESPN. Like, you just go through, the only ones that aren't in that category really are those ones I just mentioned. David Pale, who we all know, we've talked about him before. He's a higher end talent. It's just not really, some of the high school stuff that happened made it so he wasn't very high up on the list. But when you look at his offer sheet, and that's one of those things, look at offer sheets. That tells you more of the story sometimes than what evaluators are coming up with. But David Pale, and then you've got a couple guys who are more developmental, and Manuel Beagle, Jeremiah Lowe, and Zach Ludwig. But everyone else pretty much has at least got a 4-star from one of the services, right? That was what last year's class was like, where it wasn't an overwhelmingly amazing class, but it just seemed like everyone had at least one service that said, hey, you know what? You're a 4-star. We've had a better look at you, and we think you're a 4-star. And I think that when you look at some of these guys, there's some, like, I was kind of rewatching some of the film, and, well, I should say watching, because I'm not necessarily an evaluator type, so I'm not going to sit and, like, when a guy commits, I'm not like, ooh, let's take a look at the film, unless it's like everyone's like, oh, you got to see the film. I'm not necessarily writing an evaluation of guys. Owen Wafel he has some plays, man. And the way he talks, when I saw some of the stuff he talked with Dennis Fithian and EJ Holland, or was it Zach Libby? I can't remember which one. Just like, he's going to be a fan favorite right away. I mean, just his style of play and the things he says. There's just some guys like him, or guys with high upside like Jaden Smith, that I think people are going to be really excited about. Plenty of legacies here, right? You've got Blake Frazier, Jacob Oden. I know I'm missing another one here. Channing Goodwin. 3 legacies in this class. That's exciting as well. It just feels like a very well put together class. Now, could it have been a little bit higher end? Absolutely, it could have. But nonetheless, I mean, it's still a very good class, and it's the type of class you can win with. Let others go and collect a bunch of 5-stars. We've seen that doesn't always work, right? One of the things that I've noticed, Clemson was more competing when it was bringing in classes in the teens than when it started getting middling classes. It all kind of depends on that quarterback, their ability, right? If you have a middling quarterback, it's not going to work. And Michigan doesn't have a middling quarterback, as Jaden Davis. And even though he's dropped in the rankings, he's certainly, if you see the film, which I've seen a bit of his film, he's been impressive all year long, right? And I know there are some that aren't as high on him, but I think that he does what Michigan kind of wants. Now, he's not as tall, he's not quite as big or whatever, but he's just a playmaker. Now, if he can carry that over from high school to college, it's kind of the same story as J.J. McCarthy in some ways, where J.J. was cemented a 5-star at the time of his commitment. He was a 5-star all the way through, and then near the end, he, I think, was only a 5-star in one service, and everyone else had him down as a 4-star, had him down around 100 something. So if memory serves, I could be wrong on that, but I know that he was dropped to a 4-star from some of the services. Jaden Davis has got that ability and that Michigan wants. And obviously, if he can come in and play similar to how J.J. McCarthy has, maybe in a different style, but has similar type of success, can be coached up a little bit, Michigan's in good hands. We're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to give you a couple superlatives we'll talk about like who I think is the most likely to succeed, who's the most underrated, that kind of thing. I don't have it really I don't have it really fully cemented, because I might have a couple guys for a couple of the categories. So we're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. You know, we got some NFL coming up tomorrow. No football today. It's kind of annoying. But right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's right. $5 moneyline bet. Your team wins. $150 in bonus bets. It's that simple. The great thing is FanDuel's got so many different things that it has to offer. On top of that, it's got the spreads, the over-unders, money line bets, all that kind of stuff. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off this NFL season that's almost over. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so we're going to continue in on the commitments here, or the signees, rather. Right? Michigan obviously got a big commitment in Lugard Idakpai. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. According to the composite, he's 222 in the country. 24/7 Sports a little higher on him generally. He's 169 there. He's a 6'6", 230-pound edge rusher from Maryland. All of their edge rushers are from Maryland this cycle. He's from District Heights, Maryland. You got Devin Baxter from Brandywine, Maryland. You've got, Owen Wafel is technically an edge, but I have him more as a defensive tackle. I mean, he's 290 pounds, 6'1". He's listed as an edge here, but whatever. Dominic Nichols is from Johnsville, Maryland. All of their edges are from Maryland. They love their Maryland edges, and hey, Derek Moore, that works out. And I mean, speaking of Maryland, we'll eventually touch on Jay Sean Barham joining via the transfer portal, the first transfer portal commitment so far. It's not been as exciting as last year, but that's a huge win. He's a name that we've known for some time if you've paid attention to Big Ten football for the last couple of years. But the way I look at this class is I really, really like it. I don't necessarily love it, but I think that it's fine, right? Like, people are going to look at the stars and the athletes and say, that's great, right? You look at some of the guys who are really big achievers on this particular team. Yes, you have J.J. McCarthy, who was at one time a 5-star. Donovan Edwards has not been quite as good, one-time 5-star. Will Johnson was a 5-star, finished a 5-star. So you have some guys like that. But then you've got your Mikey Sainristills. Like, he was a guy that no one was really, he flipped over from Virginia Tech, and people were like, oh, okay. That's great. When Chris Jenkins committed, people were like, fine, and people were a little bit more excited about some of the other types in that class that haven't worked out, like Jordan Morant, who ended up going elsewhere. He was one of the hot names in that class. Guy like AJ Henning was more of a hot name. So sometimes the hot names don't really necessarily pan out quite as well, but they've gotten some real dudes that were more developed and really turned into some good players. And I think the more important thing is building the culture. That's why it's worked out at Michigan. And I do kind of wonder, because you look at the success Michigan's had recently, you would expect there to be 5-stars breaking down the door. Maybe before NIL, there would have been. But I think that at the same time, they've learned some valuable lessons from having some 5-stars along the way, right? Michigan hasn't necessarily had the best success with 5-stars per se. I'm going to look at the all-time commits that they've had. Rashawn Gary, very, very good. People would say he underwhelmed being the number one guy in the country. Michigan just didn't ask him to do anything flashy. Jabril Peppers, some people would also say he underwhelmed, but he was just asked to do a million things, right? Ryan Mallett, he was only around for 1 year. May he rest in peace. Lamar Woodley was incredible. Prescott Burgess was pretty good. I'm not good enough to go back and say he was great or whatever. Kelly Baraka did not work out. Brandon Graham was incredible. Daxton Hill was incredible. Donovan Peoples-Jones certainly did not play like the number 2 wide receiver in the country. He was number 1 at one point. Will Johnson has lived up to the expectations. Chad Henne was, I would say, for being a 5-star guy, I wouldn't necessarily say he was that, but he was a very high 4-star type. Ernie Shazer was pretty good. Kevin Grady certainly didn't work out that way. Aubrey Solomon didn't work out in Michigan nor in Tennessee. Derek Green didn't work out anywhere either, Michigan or TCU. Chris Hinton was very good, but not quite the 5-star ranking that he started out as. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy is working out pretty good. Here it has him listed at number 38 in the country. I don't know if this is via composite or just 24/7's proprietary. Anyway, so those are the best of the best according to the recruiting services that Michigan's had. And yet it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't always work out that way, right? It seems like a lot of times when Michigan's gotten the high end 4 stars even, those guys have been okay. And like the guys who are, got 4 stars on a couple services, 3 stars on some others, your Chase Winovich's, that type. Those are the guys who seem to work out better at Michigan because they end up being more team guys and kind of striving instead of kind of coming in being like, I know I'm amazing. So, bow down. And I think that's why Michigan's had such great success against the Ohio States of the world in the last 3 years. I mean, they'll tell you it's because of cheating, but it's when you're getting pancaked, at the line of scrimmage and all of that stuff. That's not, that's not knowing another team's signs as much as just being able to go at them. Oh, so you're surprised that Aiden Hutchinson knew to rush the passer. Well, that was kind of his job. Okay. Some of the storylines coming out of Columbus have just been absolutely hilarious. But with that in mind, it has been really it's really been the glue guys, the team guys, the Mikey Sainris stills that have really put on, right? Like Blake Corum was a pretty highly rated 4-star. But and Michigan got him. Michigan fans were excited and he wasn't thought of quite as high as some of the others. Let's take a quick look at his year. So he was a 2020 commit. And I'm guessing, well, he was 232 in the country. He was the 19th rated running back in the country in 2020. Did I say 2022? I meant 2020. So let's see if I can rate this a little bit differently here. So the people who are ahead of Blake Corum. Okay, it's not going to let me do this the way I want to. I don't think. Wait, okay, it will. Sorry, I have not been on here for a very long time to try to sort things. So Bijan Robinson was number 1. That's fair. DeMarcus Bowman, I don't even remember, I don't know who that is. He was a 5-star. Zach Evans never quite turned into what you thought he was going to. At one time, he was the number 1 guy. Jahmyr Gibbs is obviously incredible, more so, I think, now in the pros even. Don Chaney Jr., I've heard the name. Tank Bigsby, yeah, he's very good. Jace McClellan, well, we'll see a little bit of him coming up in a couple weeks. Marshawn Lloyd, I don't know him. Kendall Milton was very good. Roydell Williams, I don't know him. Jaquavius Marks, yeah, I think he's been okay. Jalen Knighton, don't know him. Trey Bradford, Israel, I'm not going to try to say his last name. Henry Parrish, Seth McGowan, Ashad Clayton, Kevon Lee from Penn State, and then Blake Corum. So, again, Michigan getting the number 232 guy in the country has boded really well for them, right? Getting those guys that are going to work hard, be culture builders, accept the culture and or build the culture, and then be a leader. That's been what's really good about this team. I didn't get to my superlatives. We're going to do that next, apparently, because I just went off on a tangent. That was not intended. So we'll give you a couple of guys that I think are going to, who do I think is going to be the best? Who do I think is underrated? Who do I think is the, a future team captain? Those types of guys. And I guess we'll just have to get to notice of allegations, Jay Sean Barham, all that kind of stuff tomorrow on Thursday. That's just going to be how that goes. So we're going to move on. But before we do, when you're hiring for your small businesses, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster as well as for free. It's so important to have the right guys, just like Michigan went out and got Jayshon Barham in the transfer portal, and we all expect that to work out really good. Hey, he's got an interception on J.J. McCarthy. He's pretty good. Pretty good guy. It's really important. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in to help you find those quality candidates. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network, much like someone else we know. More than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. The hiring is super easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to make the right hire. So thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive. It's quick, it's easy, and they've even just launched a new feature that helps you write the job description, so you don't even have to worry about that. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I'm not going to lie, it's kind of amazing that I'm this much of a chatterbox, because I don't know if it was, I was pretty exhausted when I put head to pillow, but then I was thinking about, okay, how's tomorrow going to go? And I've got to get, I got to wake up in 5 hours. And before I knew it, I was like, oh, I got to wake up in 4 hours. And then it was like, oh, I'm going to wake up in 3 hours. So I got an hour's sleep. So it's been a day, But I'm up with it. I'm doing it, right? Like, we're doing this. I've just been waiting. The whole plan was to wait till the entire class signed. Well, decided let's get this going now while we know that there's only one more left. Got to believe Josiah Edmond is going to sign. He's posting, Michigan things and all of that. So by the time that everyone watches or listens to this, see it will be in the class, all of that. So there's a lot to like from this class. And I'll tell you a couple guys that I really like. Now, Jaden Davis is the obvious one, and we'll see how he does, right? Like, it's hard to predict how a quarterback's going to do. Kyle McCord was ranked higher than J.J. McCarthy. Well, how did that work out so far? C.J. Stroud was pretty highly ranked, right? He ended up being a 5-star, I believe, by the time that he actually signed. He was a late riser, and he played like one for Ohio State, but did he win the Big Ten at any point? He did not. So it's kind of hard sometimes to project that, because you don't know once a guy gets to the next level how they're going to handle everything. My obvious answer for the most successful will be Jordan Marshall. I like where his head's at. I love what I've seen on tape. I have seen a bit of his. I just think that he is a guy that can come in. He's also probably my instant impact guy. Like, out of everybody on this list, it's hard for me to project anyone to come in year one. I mean, someone's going to. Someone always does. But for me, it would be Jordan Marshall. Obviously, they're going to lose Blake Corum. So it feels like he's got that opportunity to come in and wrest away a starting job if he really wanted to. Like, I don't know if Donovan Edwards is going to come back or not. I haven't asked him that. But it's one of those things where I feel like Jordan Marshall, regardless of who's around, I think that you've got a lot of really quality running backs still on the roster. I mean, I think he's going to end up being, at worst, the second most talented on the roster once he sets foot in Ann Arbor. So I think I think that he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to come in like Zach Charbonnet, and then it's just going to be like off to the races for him. But there's a couple other guys that I think are really, really good. I'm kind of surprised that Brady Prieskorn has dropped as much as he has. I think he has an opportunity to really kind of be, he and Hogan Hansen. Hogan Hansen's a little bit more of a blocky guy, but Prieskorn is a little bit more receiving. They both do receiving. I think I could see them kind of being, Hansen isn't quite as tall as AJ Barner, but I could see them having that same kind of relationship as Loveland and AJ Barner, where both can do the job. One might be a little bit better at blocking, one might be a little bit better at receiving, and I think that Prieskorn has that capability of potentially being that guy that you look at and say, okay, he's the next dude. Not to impugn Deacon Tonielli or Marlon Klein or any of these other guys who are still on the roster kind of waiting their turn. But I would honestly be surprised if Brady Prieskorn in particular doesn't end up thriving in this offense. I think he's going to be really, really good. Most underrated. I have a couple there. I think Jake Guarnera, and that's kind of more on AJ Holland's word for it. Owen Wafel we talked about earlier. I think he is very clearly underrated. A lot of schools wanted him. I mean, he was committed to Notre Dame before. Seeing some of his film for the first time, I think he looks very, very good. Micah Kapana might be in that. I think he might be a couple years away. I don't think you're going to have that Tavier Dunlap situation where he just kind of languishes in the background forever. I think he's got a lot of capability. I mean, not that Tavier Dunlap doesn't. I just think that it ends up being kind of a weird fit for Michigan to some degree. Jaden Smith, I don't think that's much of a surprise, right? Like, ESPN has him up in the, like, really high. Everyone else is kind of, some of them it's, oh yeah, he's a 4-star, but Jaden Smith is a dude, didn't get a ton of offers. I just feel like he did not get evaluated very much. And those who did are like, wow. Lots of untapped potential. He's 6'3", 201. You use him as a linebacker. He was playing safety. Certainly could be that edge rusher. I think he's got a lot of capability in particular. And David Pale obviously is someone that I think is going to be a multi-year starter. I think he could come in year one. He's the other guy who could be an instant impact guy, who could come in year one, have that Mason Graham type role. He might not be a starter, but he's going to come in, I think, and just make people be like, wait, whoa, right? And then Josiah Edmond has really risen up there. And I think that it's funny because when he committed, it was kind of like, well, they lost out on Aaron Scott and Bryce West, and they had swung for the fences, and it's really disappointing. And they, Bryce ended up, being just outside of 5-star range. Aaron Scott ended up being a 5-star, and it's disappointing. I think that this is a great consolation prize, if it's that at all. He's a total lockdown guy, and he's kind of a steal of the draft, of the rookie class, however you want to say it. And then I'll add one more underrated guy, and that's Devin Baxter. I think Devin Baxter is going to be a lot better than people think. He's got to bulk up a little bit, but there's a lot to really like there. Their edge class it feels very boomer bust kind of in some ways, but it feels like it has a really, really, really high ceiling. It's not necessarily as exciting as Derek Moore, but I think that between, Eric Pye and Baxter and Dominic Nichols, there's just a lot that feels like it could go really good. And also, I think Jacob Oden is kind of getting underrated as well. We've got to run. I'll give you one place where I feel underwhelmed. That's wide receiver. I think Channing Goodwin is good. He's got a really good rapport with Jaden Davis, which is important. I think Amarian Stewart has a lot of speed. But, man, it does not feel like an exciting position group right now for Michigan. They've got to step it up a little bit. Like, I think these are good pieces, but they're good secondary pieces. They need a true number one guy. It felt like they got that in Darius Clemens a couple of years ago. It has not worked out. They can go to the transfer portal, but that's the one thing that I think this class is lacking. That's what it needs the most, I believe, and it doesn't have it. And I don't think there's any uncommitted wide receivers out there for them to go and get. That's signing day. That's where we're at. Certainly, I'm probably going to be wrong, and there's probably going to be a Jim Harbaugh podcast that raves about guys that I didn't rave about and is a little bit more, hey, this is a developmental guy. Right? Well, I just can't wait to tune in and hear him be like Jeremiah Lowe and Zach Ludwig are just the guys that are just going to absolutely kill it for us, and they might play year one. DJ Waller. I mean, he's out there. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll get to all the other stuff, the NOA stuff. We'll talk a little bit more about Jayshawn Barham. There's other stuff from throughout the week, but we'll be back on Thursday night. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.